Because people were like, oh, you are now living your Tai Tai life. Which I'm like, no, self-employment is not Tai Tai, right? Is this gonna be like, forever kind of business, or is it gonna be like a passion project? Is it now? Is it now? And I always knew like, I wanted to start a business. Like, if I don't do this now, when am I gonna do it? It's been in my mind for the longest of time when I was really young. So I always see her making jewelry, giving it away, gifting it to friends. Running a business while being a full-time consultant is impossible. Well, at least weird, to be honest. I remember still going back to my office because I was like, hi guys, I'm back. Because this is okay. Nobody's gonna tell me what to do today, right? And I'm in charge. I can choose to sleep in, or I can choose to get my ass up and work and make things happen.
That was Eva, the founder of Inari Jewelry. I recently sat down with her to talk about her jewelry making business, her life, and how she took that plunge into entrepreneurship. Talking with her made me realize that everyone's path is different and that sometimes you just have to have faith, take that next step forward. I hope you enjoy the full talk here. Right. Hi, Eva. Welcome. It's quite a pleasure to speak to you. And I guess you know, being a fellow entrepreneur myself, I find myself quite interested in what the journey of everyone else is. And I think I first
Mm.
saw you, I think like in a job update that you finally transitioned into a full-time CEO and founder of Inari Jewelry, which I took that as like, oh, someone else is doing the same thing too, and I just wanted to know where you're coming from and why do you want to do it. So it's a pleasure speaking to you, lah. And yeah, before that,
No, it's great
how
having.
are you
Yeah,
today? Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being on this call and like doing this. Sometimes it still surprises me that people want to hear about my story. So, this is an interesting session. I've been
Okay.
good. I've been good.
Yeah. I guess just to start off, we know that you're the founder of Inari Jewelry, but if you
Mhm.
have to introduce yourself or describe yourself, how would you do it? You
Oh, interesting. Okay. Actually, I always had issue trying to introduce myself after
yeah.
leaving my consulting job because when people say, "Oh, like what do you do?" I always find it quite interesting to like have to introduce myself as um an entrepreneur, um
Mm,
because there's always that what do you call that? Imposter syndrome. Like, oh, am I good enough? But anyway, that aside, I'm Eva. I would say that, I'm a consultant turned entrepreneur. Um, and I've started my own demi-fine handmade jewelry brand Inari last year. So it's been about a year and a half almost. And yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey. To be honest, I've learned so much. Starting my own business is not as easy as it looks, and I have a lot of respect for all the entrepreneurs out there and also content creators out there because I think in today's world, running your own business is equivalent to also being a content creator in itself. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and how I would introduce myself.
I see. Did you always have that, the passion to do jewelry since we were young? And can you
Mm,
talk us through that process? Yeah.
mhm. I mean, I wouldn't say that like I always love making jewelry. Um, I grew up in a family where my grandparents were goldsmith. My uncle and aunties are also goldsmith. So my mom also learned making jewelry um, when I was really young. So I always see her making jewelry, giving it away, gifting it to friends. And I always wondered, like, oh, what if, I learn how to make jewelry myself? I love jewelry in itself. Being a girl, I have always collected like a lot of different costume jewelries growing up. Being overseas, I've seen a lot of different, independent designers out there. Uh, yeah, and I realized that, I not only do I like jewelry, like wearing it, but I also like the creative process behind, designing a piece, figuring out what materials to make it out of, how to make it. There's actually a lot of science behind it, believe it or not. Um, yeah, and I think that passion just over time grew into something that I felt like, hey, beyond just a consumer of jewelries, what if I make my own jewelry, or like I create my own jewelry and a brand in it? So that's how I started. I actually started two other businesses before, also in jewelry. So
See.
yeah, so the first one was actually in the UK. I started off with another partner, a friend, and we decided to buy and sell. So we were buying, wholesale from like China and selling it in pounds. And that was good business
Oh, okay.
because, the margins are great. Um, so that was my very first foray into like, business, running a business. So we did a lot of pop-ups there. We learned how to, create a brand, create a logo, how to sell. But I realized after a while that buying and selling, that model didn't work for me because it was very much about just making money. And it's about hunting for the nicest like design you can find out there. You have very limited control in like the design that you like, and also the quality sometimes. So you end up like buying a lot and then testing and then realizing you don't like it. So it's almost like a mishmash of things. It feels like you are putting different puzzle pieces together. So I realized I didn't quite like that business model. And we, like me and my business partner, kind of like parted ways. We went to different countries. And then when I was in Singapore, so I moved from London to Singapore.
Mm.
And then when I was in Singapore, I think this was like when the pandemic hit. I
Oh,
decided
so it's
to start
2020.
my business with my mom. Yeah.
Oh,
So because my mom was giving away stuff, right? And I was like, why are you giving away things that you have spent hours making? Right. So I was like, why don't we make a business out of it? So I created a brand for her because she always wanted to start her own business. So I created a brand for her. She made all the jewelry making. At that time, I kind of like learned a little bit in London, but I never really thought I would make the jewelry, right? So I was like, oh, why don't you make the jewelry? And I'll kind of like um help you figure out the business side of things because I was a consultant before this. So I was like, I know how to, set up a business and the behind the scenes back end side of things. I'll know how to strategize that. So we did that for a bit. And then I went back into consulting because I had like a sabbatical. And that was when I realized that, oh, running a business while being a full-time consultant is impossible. Well, at least for me. Yeah. So that was when I decided that, 2 years down the road, I was like, if I don't do this now, when am I going to do it? And if were to do it, I want to do it seriously because I already knew that, running a business while being a consultant would not have worked for me because I've tried it twice. And I knew what I liked and what I didn't like in the type of business I wanted. I knew I was still in jewelry making or like in jewelry, but I knew what I didn't like and what I liked and what kind of brand I wanted to create. So that was how Inari was started actually. Yeah. So
oh.
people always think that Inari was my first business, but it's not really. I've spent quite a lot of time like figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like, what worked, what didn't work. Yeah, and what kind of risks to take before I plunged in. Yeah, to do it full time.
Hmm. Actually, like one thing stuck out to me when you were talking, like you say like if I don't do this now, like when will I do this, and
Mm,
I find that like I had the same thought process, like starting my own business. I
mm,
say like if I
yeah.
don't do this now, will I do this in like when I'm 35 or 40?
Mm,
And those thoughts always like pervade my mind. But from your perspective, how long did you have these thoughts? Like like, oh, should I take the
mm,
lunch now? Should I like do it later? Like
mm-hmm,
what was your thought process like behind that? Yeah.
mm-hmm. To be honest, it wasn't just like a year's worth of like thought process. I actually always had this thought. Even when I was in like college. So when I was in college, I always was like, okay, I want to start my own thing. I don't know what it is. And my mom used to like, hook me up with like another entrepreneur and like mentor and try to come up like, try to get me to come up with an idea. And at that time, I just didn't know what it was. And then I think over time, as I went into my consulting career, when I went to uni, uni and then consulting career, I always thought like, is it now? Is it now? And I always knew like, I wanted to start a business. I just didn't know what it was in or what would that one thing be that I would be so passionate about that I would stick to it and I would be willing to work hard regardless of like, what day it is, how much time I'm going to put into it, how much money I'm going to put into it. So I would say that it's not like a year kind of thing. It's been in my mind for the longest of time. It was just so much so that it was just recently, like I think about two years ago, where you know I thought, okay, maybe this idea, like Inari, or what I thought Inari would be the idea that I would like quit my job for, and that I would take the plunge in. And from that moment, it was more of like, okay, let's try to figure out what does that mean. Is this going to be like, forever kind of business, or is it going to be like a passion project? Because I think there's a difference in the amount of effort you want to invest in and how much money you want to invest in and what kind of risks you want to take as well. Because I think your why is so important. Because if your why is I just want to see how this goes, then maybe don't quit your job for it, right? Like if your why is like I want to build this brand and I want to make this my full-time job and I want to this is how I see in the next 5 years, then maybe quit your job, right? Kind of thing. So that was how like the thought process started. What do I want this to be, right? Is there a market around it? Is this gonna be a full-time thing? Um, okay, if I'm gonna quit my job, what does that mean? How much runway do I need? Um, what kind of capability do I need, right? How much money do I need to invest into the business? Um, what's my next 6 months plan? So really when the idea came about to the point where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is something I want to quit my job for. Um, I think it took about a year and a half before I finally quit. Yeah. But the idea of like, that I want to quit my job and start my own business has always been there. It's just always about finding the right point and finding the right opportunity to do it. And when I eventually found the right time and opportunity, it took about like a year and a half before I eventually quit. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like 10 years ago that you have that thought, and now you're like, okay, this is the right time and this is the right point, this is the right opportunity,
Yeah.
and you just took it. And I guess like it just felt right, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And as much as like, it sounds weird, I feel like your intuition will lead you to the right direction. I mean, like I could have started so many businesses down, but like 5 years ago, right? But I didn't. Why? And it's always that gut feel, like, you will always have like this safety net or like this baseline of what you need before you actually should pursue it fully. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody should quit your job, right? For me, what I needed to do based off of my lifestyle and my career back then, I knew I couldn't have done it if I didn't quit my job because my job was 150% of my life, right? So I knew like because of that, I have to quit my job to be able to give this a good shot. But because my job was so time consuming, but it also gave me the runway in terms of investment to then now say, okay, I'm going to take 2 years off and I'm gonna give myself 2 years to give this a shot. So it was a lot of like, you know, assessing of like assessment of like your lifestyle, your current situation, what you need to invest in terms of like money, time, for your business, what business you're gonna open, right? What you're gonna start. So I feel like all of that is um it's very specific to different individuals and their circumstances and also the type of business you want to run. So that was a lot of that thought process beforehand. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because for me, like, I've been a writer for like 7 years, and I've always like pursued
Mm,
writing on the side. Like you say, like, like when was the right time to like plunge for it? And I find that, like the moment that I plunged into my own business was when I said like, I'm gonna give myself maybe 2 years to try to work this out.
mm,
But financially, I needed to be secure too. Like
yeah.
how big was like the financial aspect of it like factor into like, oh, let's give it 2 years. Yeah.
Mm. Huge. I mean, huge, right? That's the realistic side of it.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to start this business without getting funding externally. I wanted it to be all self-funded, and therefore I have to account for that. And then I knew what my lifestyle was, and therefore I accounted for what that would be and what how many like months I needed, right, to be able to one, be comfortable enough to live my life, two, be comfortable enough to not only live my life but invest into the business because without the money you can't grow, right? So all of that was taken into account. And when I was still working in consulting, I was calculating backwards, right? Okay, if I needed this amount of runway, how many more months of work do I need to like um continue working in order to save up that income? And I think I stayed on 6 extra months to be able to get to that bonus, and then also the additional income to be able to afford that, like, I'm going to take 2 years off. But of course now I'm like, it's not a 2 year off thing, this is the thing, because I've put my foot in fully to know that, hey, actually this will work and this is what it means. Yeah.
Hmm. So how did it feel like, um, let me put an example, like, on that
Mhm.
day where you decided like, okay, I'm gonna put my foot in fully, like then the next day you
Mhm.
wake up, like how exactly did you feel? Because for me, it was just like, oh no, like I don't really have this safety net anymore of like a main job. Now I have to truly
Mhm.
commit to it. Like, how was it for you?
Mhm.
Like,
And I think you mean like the first day of unemployment
yeah,
or self-employment, I would say. First day of self-employment, how did that feel,
yeah,
right? Uh, First day of self-employment felt really weird, to be honest. I remember still going back to my office because I was like, "Hi guys, I'm back," because this is my safety net. No, but I went back to return my laptop.
I see.
Um, but I remember waking up and I was like, "Okay, nobody's gonna tell me what to do today, right? And I'm in charge. I can choose to sleep in, or I can choose to get my ass up and work and make things happen." But then you also have to realize that just because you are waking up and doing work doesn't mean you will see the result immediately, because you're a new business. It takes so much effort to build whatever foundation it takes to try and figure out whether your idea is something that there's a market for, and whether actually what you like doing is a career versus a passion project, right? That is such a big difference between a career versus a passion project that people don't realize. um yeah, and like all of that thought starts flooding in, right? And I remember just being really scared. And I was like, no, I have to work extra hard, because I felt like, now that I'm self employed, I have to work extra hard to prove to other people just because I'm self employed, I'm not slacking. I think the first couple of months of self-employment was a lot of like trying to prove to other people that, hey, actually my job is quite tough too. Because people were like, oh, you are now living your tai life. Which I'm like, no, self-employment is not tai, right? It's not like, oh, you wake up and you get to sleep, like you wake up the next day, you're self-employed and you can sleep until like 12 o'clock. You don't. People, I think the first couple of months was a lot of like trying to prove people's perception of self-employment wrong. Yeah. So that was how I felt. Day one, let's make sure that, I work hard enough to show people that I've made the right decision.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
like one of the things that stood out, like when you say like, I'm doing a lot of things, but there's that nagging feeling like, is this gonna work out? Like, are people gonna like
Yeah.
it? And like, how long is this gonna take? Like before like I become like, quote unquote successful in what I do.
Mm,
Uh, you know, because for me, like when I look at it, it's like, you day in, day out, you're just like working like 12 to 16 hours trying to like be self-employed.
yeah.
And like you say, like it's not like you're becoming a tai or like, you have a lot of free time. You don't, because
Yeah.
whatever you do is translates into the business. So I guess
Yeah.
like what really stood out is like, what I really reciprocate is that, you're not sure every day what you're doing will really like pan out. but you still
Yeah.
kept doing it. Like, maybe it's faith, maybe it's like, if I don't do it, I will never know. But I
Yeah.
guess like what I'm trying to say is that, were there like days in terms of your self-employment where you feel like, you know what, I don't really know whether what I'm doing is correct, but I'm still gonna do it. And like,
Yeah.
what really like motivates you to like be that in that kind of mind frame? Yeah.
Mm, to be honest, until today, and it's been like a year and 4 months into, launching my business and everything. Until today, there will still be some days where I'm like looking at my team and I'm like, what am I doing? Do you think I'm doing the right thing? And my team would laugh at me because they know I'm like a bit silly. And they're like, no, no, we're all doing the right thing. So it helps. And I think you will always have moments of self-doubt, always, right? And I think you only have self-doubt because you care. You care about where this goes. You care about what the outcome would be. You care about the effort you put in. And only if you care that, you start thinking about all of these things, right? And I feel like you will know. And I always tell myself, Eva, consistency is key. Just because you don't see the result today doesn't mean that it's not fruitful. Because sometimes, like in this 1 year, I would say, so many things have happened where I'm like, I didn't see that coming. But I guess all the compilation of all the different work that I've done is showcasing some sort of returns, right? But I never saw it coming. For example, like we recently got like a feature on Bureau as one of the top
Mhm.
places to local jewelry
Congrats.
brands to shop with. And we were like number one. And I was like, wait, where did this come from? Like, I didn't go chase for it. I didn't go like submit my application for it. It happened. And I still don't know who wrote it. And I was like thinking, okay, actually, all the little things that I've been putting effort into, it's showcasing, people are noticing. Sometimes it's so hard to realize that every single little things that you're doing is making a difference because you're so engrossed into the nitty-gritty of the process, right? You don't see the bigger picture. You only see all the mistakes you make. You only see all
Mm.
the imperfections that you've created. But from the outside in, your customers or your readers, your subscribers are actually getting so much out of it, right? I have customers who would come to me at pop-ups and they'd be like, oh my God, I've been wearing your necklace for like the past 6 months. I love it. And like, I've never taken it out, blah, blah, blah. And then another person would come in and say like, hey, like, I never buy this kind of jewelry before and I saw it and it's like, I've been loving it and it's changed my perception, blah, blah, blah. Like things like that you never thought would happen. And I wasn't working towards one of that situation. Like I wasn't working towards that particular situation, right? I was working towards a goal. And along the way, you have people recognizing the effort that you put in. And so sometimes I feel like even though there are still days where I'm like, what am I doing? Does it make sense? Actually it does because the world has a funny way of telling you that all the little effort that you put in is um showcasing is making a difference. Right? It's making a difference. Some people would tell me like, "Oh, why are you doing jewelry? Jewelry is like um a luxury good. You don't really need it, blah blah blah." In my mind, even if I'm not doing jewelry, other people are still gonna buy jewelry. So, if it's something that I'm passionate about, I love the artisanal side of things. I love the sustainability side of things. Why don't I create a brand that holds and embodies that for people to be able to have options, right? So you will always have moments, long story short, you will always have moments where you'll question yourself, you'll question what you're entering into, whether you are doing the right thing. Maybe I should do a social enterprise instead because it's more meaningful, or maybe I should do this instead because it's easy money. You will always have all these questions. But if you know like what your why is and what you are truly passionate about, you will start seeing that the universe will show you signs
Mm.
that you're doing the right thing. So you just keep doing the things that you're doing consistently and you will eventually see results, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I think before this you mentioned like, I feel like I always have like imposter syndrome. I think like you've just
Mm-hmm.
perfectly described what it felt like every day to me, and because I feel it all the time
Mhm.
too. Like what am I doing? Is it
Mm.
correct? But you just gotta keep doing it lah. And speaking of your team, like, do you have like a big team or is just like a couple of designers? Like, can you talk us
Mm.
through that?
So I have a small team, I would say, and the team has grown and shrunk over time. So currently we
Oh, okay.
have a full-time, well, not a full-time, a part-time maker. Um, so she makes most of our design alongside with me. Um, Actually, my mom helps me now because she used to make
Okay.
jewelry, right? So I was like, why don't you come and help me? So she's helping me out as well. I have a creative director who helps with the general like brand aesthetic direction. I've got like two social media freelancers who are helping me out as well. Um, and an intern at the moment. But before that, we had a business development person and another maker. So I think over time it just grew and shrunk um, different seasons because I think as a relatively new startup, it's quite difficult to try and commit yourself to a full-time employment. So I think part-time for me worked well. Um, and also I wanted to be very strategic with the employment, like the team that I'm building. And I always tell my team that, I want to create a team that I see grow with me and grow with the brand. But realistically speaking, it's as a startup, it's really hard to hire people because you're new, so you can't afford a lot, right? But at the same time, you want good people. And if you train someone, you want them to stay. And if they stay, you eventually need to be able to create somewhat like a progression opportunity for them, right? So yeah, that's my team, and that's some of the um, challenges, I guess, that I also face with it. Yeah.
Hmm, okay, I see. So it does sound like hiring is probably like, would you say like hiring is like a major problem for like, for you as a startup? And would you say like, maybe like that is the biggest cost to your business, or is it more like, more
Mhm.
materials or something like that? You did mention that, it's a
Mm,
sustainability thing and you do use like some of the recycled materials, right? Like,
yeah.
so can you bring us through the process? Like, what was the biggest headache when you manage your business?
Headache. Um, I'd say definitely like having a team is a headache, right? Like
Mm,
you need a team to grow, but then it's so hard to find, people with the right skills and the right kind of like vision as you, as a small business to grow with the business because people who sometimes have their own ambition, they would go off then to like start their own business as well, and no problem for that, but it's just more of like how do you find the right person who would grow with your business along with you, right? Of course, I'm happy for whoever who's going to go out there and then start their own thing. But also at the same time, you have to think about how do you then retain? Because retention is a very important thing in any business, right? What more a small startup with very limited um, ability, resources to be able to pay people an enticing package, right? So I think definitely like hiring the right people is super important. Being able to find them and then keep them is also another like super, super important thing, right? So that's where culture, um, you know, and finding the right people is super important, which is not the easiest thing. I would say that's one of the largest costs. Second largest cost, actually, the highest cost would definitely be materials, I'd say, because a lot of what we purchase is of high quality and it's usually pegged to either the silver or the gold prices. So as I don't know if you know, but like the gold prices is crazy
mm,
nowadays. It fluctuates up and down like almost on a daily basis. So and because most of my materials are also purchased from the US, because in the US gold field is needed to have like required to have 5% weightage of solid gold legally, right? So it's safest to buy from a country that supplies and follows that I guess that rule, right? Anywhere else, you're not necessarily sure whether they're actually giving you what you potentially have purchased. So, and why I say that and why I brought that up is because the US currency obviously fluctuates as well. Well, it's Malaysian ringgit actually. The Malaysian ringgit is obviously plunging. So that means per USD is very, very high. So that means like costs of raw material also increases almost always, right? So everything goes up, but your cost price. So that is also another headache to deal with. So I think really those are the two major costs. I try to keep operating costs as lean as possible because you don't have the luxury to just spend money
Yeah.
all the time, right? So you have to be very careful in terms of like your cash flow and also where do you then reinvest the money that you have gained, because as you grow, just because you make money doesn't mean you get to keep all the money. The faster you grow, the more money you actually need because you have to buy more materials, right? And then you have to pay people to make more of your products to be able to then sell. And then if you grow faster, you need more display, and display surprisingly costs a lot of money too. And then you run out of time trying to do everything yourself. So you now start to hire team. So that also costs money. Yeah, so actually people always think that, oh, if you're making money it's great, but you're making money and you're growing, but that also means that you need more money to then grow.
Yeah.
So cash flow is super important, and I don't think people actually realize that until you're in it. Yeah, so I would say like that is probably like uh the most challenging, which is to try and scale in a sustainable manner, considering like staff, considering production, considering like cash flow and everything else.
Mm, okay. Um, well, we have about 5 more minutes left. Let's
Yeah.
you know end on a good note. Let us say like I think like the question on everyone's mind. Like when we're talking about
Mm.
entrepreneurship, and I know like for you is the jewelry making. Like what would be your main advice for people who have an idea like you 10 years ago,
Mhm.
but they are afraid to take that plunge forward to their own business? What will be your main advice to them?
You have an idea and you haven't been able to take a plunge. I
Or
guess
rather like
the
work
first
on it?
thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, then the most important question is really to think about whether that is really um something you believe in, because I feel that a lot of times when I myself haven't taken a plunge, it's because somewhere inside me, there's always doubt, right? And the reason why I say this is like my number one advice is because if you're not sure about your idea and you don't fully believe in what you're going to do, then maybe don't do it. Because people don't realize, right, that there are so many people that's out there starting businesses, and a lot of them don't last because when things gets hard, you start doubting yourself too. And trust me, there will be a lot of difficult moments, and there will be a lot of moments where you start questioning yourself and whether you're doing the right thing. And you need to be able to always bring yourself back to, yep, I'm doing the right thing. This is what I believe in, and I can see a potential in it. Because otherwise, you're gonna have you will be in a situation where you have invested so much money, so much time into it, and then you pull out, right? And that could be like 5 months down the road when you have spent 50,000 ringgit. Who knows, right? Unless you're pretty sure about what you are getting yourself into and you truly believe in it, then maybe think twice is what I would say. I mean, I'm sure you would have thought about it fully, like, right? And you truly believe that, hey, I believe in what I'm doing and I really have passion in it and I want to give myself a chance. Right. And I think there are a lot of people who like one part of business, or they have a very specific view of what business is all about. They like that part, but what they don't realize is there's all of these other things beyond just, I don't know if you like the digital marketing side of it. There's actually all the other backend stuff that is not so sexy that needs to be done too. Or like if you like making candle is not just the only thing you need to do in business. There's so much more. And I think people don't realize that. So yeah, if you have an idea and you've been sitting on it, like try and challenge yourself. Like, why have you not done it? Is it because you're scared? If you're scared of the financial side, then you will take action, right? You will figure out, okay, what will my runway be? Therefore, I would work towards that. But if you haven't done anything about it, you haven't actually taken action, why is that? Is it just money, or is it because you don't actually fully believe in the business? So there's actually a lot of layers into it that I think we have to peel and try and figure it out. Because I feel like if money is one thing, you will always find a solution to make money not a problem. You know what I mean? Like you will always
Yeah.
have a solution to a problem. And then you will eventually get yourself to a position where you would launch it. You would go take that leap of faith. You haven't done it because you probably have a number of different worries or uncertainties. So try and answer those uncertainties. And eventually you'll end up finding yourself in a situation where, you will take that leap. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like it's true what they say, like, if you have a lot of doubts in your mind, those doubts are
Mm,
indirectly like guiding your decision moving forward. And I think I can get that.
yeah.
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 I think our time is running out. Thank you, Eva, for the conversation. I think I really learned a lot from it. I hope the best for you and
Thanks.
Inari. Yeah.
Thank
And
you. Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for taking this time.
Yeah. If you want more information about Eva's story and Inari Jewelry, consider taking a look at our website that I've attached below. And also consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Thank you.